Welcome to the debate. In 1991, the biggest pop star on the planet had, a $10 million production budget.
Right, an absolute fortune.
Exactly. He had access to the most technologically advanced recording studios on Earth. And the expectation from his record label was to just deliver the slickest, safest pop album in history.
Which is exactly what anyone else would have done.
But what did he do? For one of the lead tracks, he literally locked himself in a dark room with a cheap, handheld microcassette recorder to track his vocals. He completely isolated himself from the machinery outside. So today, we are analyzing Michael Jackson's Dangerous.
And it really is one of the most fascinating fracture points in modern cultural history. You have this individual who is literally sitting on top of the world, yet structurally the foundation is showing massive stress fractures.
Right. And the central question we're debating today is this. Was the Dangerous era the ultimate artistic emancipation and technological triumph of a global visionary? Or was it a monument of excessive spectacle that masked deep paranoia, ultimately signaling the tragic collapse of the world's biggest pop star?
A collapse that reshaped pop culture forever, honestly.
Absolutely. So I will be arguing that Dangerous is his absolute Independence Day. By walking away from his safety net, the legendary producer Quincy Jones, he boldly aligned with a 23-year-old Harlem prodigy named Teddy Riley. I argue this fusion created a gritty, groundbreaking new jack swing plus sound and sparked a visual revolution that changed music television forever.
And I will be countering that. Because while the technical achievements are obviously undeniable, the album is really a document of profound paranoia and paradox. I argue that the era's relentless excess, the underlying psychological trauma, and the eventual, implosion of the 1993 tour marked the beginning of the end. It's the era where the spectacle finally swallowed the man.
Well, I look at Dangerous as his ultimate emancipation. Think about the pressure. Sony actually had a greatest hits compilation planned called the Decade Project. It would have been the safest financial bet imaginable.
Printing money, basically.
Exactly. But instead, he cancels it. He walks away from Quincy Jones, the guy who literally helped him build Thriller and Bad, and he completely reinvents his sonic architecture to stay culturally dominant in a new decade.
Okay, I hear the argument for liberation, but I just don't buy that it was true emotional freedom. When you peel back those unprecedented production budgets and the aggressive new sounds, Dangerous is fundamentally a document of profound paranoia.
Paranoia? How so?
Yes. He fired Quincy Jones and changed producers, but he didn't just build a new sound. He built a fortress. We absolutely cannot ignore the terrifying pressures he was under at this exact moment. His physical appearance was changing dramatically due to vitiligo, the tabloid media was absolutely relentless, and the nature of his fame had become just utterly suffocating.
But you say he built a fortress to protect himself from that trauma. I'd argue he built that fortress out of the loudest, most aggressive, cutting-edge drum programming he could find. He went to Harlem and found Teddy Riley, who had basically just invented New Jack Swing.
Right, Riley was the architect of that entire street-level R&B movement.
Exactly. Jackson brings Riley in and basically hands him a blank check. They booked out 7 simultaneous studios at Record One and Larrabee so engineers could mix continuously. But what makes this era so brilliant isn't the money, it's the specific mechanics of how they recorded it. Riley relied heavily on the Akai MPC60 drum machine.
Which, to be fair, completely changed the landscape of pop music.
It shifted the actual mathematics of the rhythm. Before the MPC60, 80s pop drums like the Roland TR-808 or the Linn drum were incredibly rigid. Everything sat perfectly on the mathematical grid of the sequencer. It was robotic.
Very stiff.
Right. But the MPC60 allowed for something called swing quantization. Riley could program it so that every second 16th note was delayed by just a fraction of a millisecond. It physically shifted the grid.
It forces a groove. It makes the body react differently.
Yes, it literally made the human body dance differently than a rigid 80s pop did. It's the New Jack Swing plus sound. And instead of falling into the trap of early 90s sterile digital audio, Riley insisted on running those mechanical MPC beats through vintage analog mixing boards.
To get that harmonic distortion, right?
Exactly, that live funk warmth. Listen to a track like She Drives Me Wild. Riley didn't even use standard drum hits. He used literal car sounds. Honking horns, engine revs, door slamming, he quantized them into the rhythmic foundation of the track. It was industrial, it was gritty, and it kept Jackson at the absolute forefront of a rapidly shifting musical landscape.
Okay, the technical execution of the New Jack Swing elements is undeniable. I will give you that. But let's look at what that MPC60 groove was actually covering up.
Covering up?
Yes. Underneath those heavy, syncopating drum patterns lies severe isolation and a profound lack of trust in humanity. Let's look at the darker tracks on this album, the ones where the upbeat New Jack Swing veneer completely strips away. Take Give In to Me.
Oh, the rock ballad.
Right. It's a bleak, hard rock track featuring Slash from Guns N' Roses, and it is steeped in agony and manipulation. Or even more tellingly, look at Who Is It?
I mean, that is one of his absolute masterpieces.
It is a masterpiece, but it was produced entirely by Jackson himself without Teddy Riley. And sonically, it is agonizing. It doesn't have that infectious swing. It features this relentless, claustrophobic bass line that doesn't make you want to dance. It traps you.
It's definitely a darker tone.
The lyrics are completely consumed by betrayal and despair. He's singing, I am the damned, I am the dead. That is not the sound of an emancipated man who is enjoying his creative freedom. It's the sound of a fractured inner world.
But wait, isn't that contrast exactly the point?
How do you mean?
Like a Trojan horse. He knows he has the attention of the entire globe. He knows Top 40 radio is going to play whatever he puts out. So he takes these incredibly raw, dark emotions, the paranoia, betrayal, sexual fear, and he smuggles them inside the most immaculate, rhythmically complex pop production on Earth. He is forcing the mainstream to consume his therapy sessions.
Oh, come on, you're making it sound like a master plan. Let's go back to your opening example, the Dictaphone. Let's talk about his recording process for a track like In the Closet.
The mystery girl vocal.
Right. He originally wanted Madonna for the female vocal on that track, but when she came into the studio and suggested a more provocative, challenging lyrical direction, he couldn't handle it. He retreated to safety.
Well, they had creative differences.
He ended up secretly using Princess Stephanie of Monaco, recording her in Paris, and crediting her only as Mystery Girl. The entire process screams of secrecy. And then he tracks his own scratch vocals alone in a room on a handheld microcassette recorder. It's pure isolation.
But think about the sheer technical audacity of doing that. How do you even integrate a lo-fi dictaphone tape into a pristine $10 million studio mix?
It's not easy, obviously.
It's nearly impossible. Jackson's engineer, Bruce Sweden, literally had to take the headphone output of this cheap plastic recorder, run it through a direct injection box to match the electrical impedance of a $1 million SSL console, and carefully EQ it so the T-Piz became a percussive texture rather than just noise.
Okay, I admit it's a neat technical trip.
It's not just a trick. The dictaphone isn't just a sign of isolation. It's a raw, abrasive texture that Jackson intentionally weaponized to cut through the slickness of the studio.
It is a striking sonic juxtaposition, I'll grant you that. But that psychological friction didn't just stay in the audio mix. It exploded onto global television screens.
And what a visual revolution it was. With Dangerous, he completely abandoned the concept of the standard music video and fully transitioned to the short film, elevating the medium to global cinema. I mean, the HBO deal alone was $20 million.
The scale was massive.
The premiere of Black or White was an unprecedented broadcast event. 500 million viewers tuned in simultaneously across 27 countries. Fox, MTV, BET, the BBC, everyone cleared their schedules. And what he showed them literally changed the visual effects industry forever.
You're talking about the morphing sequence.
Exactly. At the end of the video, you have people of different ethnicities seamlessly transforming into one another. Prior to this, if Hollywood wanted to transition between two faces, they basically just used a crossfade.
Just fading one image over the other.
Right. They'd line up the eyes, drop the opacity of the first image to 0, and raise the second image to 100. It always looked blurry and cheap. But Pacific Data Images, PDI, developed a vector-based morphing algorithm specifically for this project.
And how does that algorithm actually differ from a standard fade?
Instead of just blending pixels, the algorithm actually mapped the geometric structure of the faces. Animators placed dozens of control points on the eyes, the nose, the jawline of the first person and matched them to the second person.
So it warps the image?
Yes, the software physically warped the pixels like digital clay, stretching the bone structure of one face into the next before executing the color fade. It took weeks to render a few seconds of footage. It was mind-blowing technology that set the standard for Hollywood films like Terminator 2 for the next decade.
It was definitely groundbreaking for VFX.
And then you follow that up with a short film for Remember the Time, directed by Oscar nominee John Singleton.
Set in ancient Egypt.
Yes, and starring Magic Johnson, Eddie Murphy, and Iman. It was a deliberate, massive reclaiming of Black history and excellence. To present ancient Egyptian royalty with an entirely Black A-list cast on a global cinematic scale was profoundly subversive for MTV in 1992.
The morphing technology was a watershed moment, and the casting of Remember the Time was highly impactful. But you cannot talk about the premiere of Black or White without talking about the highly controversial final 4 minutes of that extended broadcast, the Panther Coda.
Ah, the extended cut.
Because this is where the spectacle completely swallows the man.
I mean, it was a very raw piece of performance art.
It was a sign of a man losing control under unbearable pressure. Think about the sequence. After this beautiful, technologically groundbreaking message of racial harmony, the song ends. But the video keeps going. A Black Panther prowls onto an empty city street, morphs into Jackson, and he proceeds to engage in a wildly aggressive, violent dance routine without any music.
It was an expression of anger.
He violently smashes the windows of a car with a crowbar. He rips the steering wheel out. He throws a garbage can through a storefront window. He drops to his knees, tears his shirt open, and repeatedly, aggressively grabs his crotch while screaming.
But wait, let's unpack that. I've always wondered about the timeline of the Panther Coda. You've got him smashing the windows with the racist graffiti. Was that graffiti part of the original artistic vision?
No, that is the crucial detail. The original broadcast that went out to 500 million people just had him smashing blank car windows and destroying an unmarked storefront.
Wow, really?
Yes, it looked like pure, unhinged rage without any context. The public backlash was immediate and severe. Parents were outraged. So his camp retroactively went in with CGI and added the KKK rules and the swastikas to the glass. They retroactively added those symbols of hate to justify the violent spectacle to the media. It shows a massive disconnect and impulsivity.
But couldn't you argue that the raw violence of the Panther Coda actually served a brilliant confrontational purpose?
Yes, he added the graffiti later to make his intentions explicitly clear to a very dense media landscape, but the raw Black anger was always the point of the choreography.
I don't know if I buy that. Think about it. The tap dancing, the screaming. He was forcing a sanitized, conservative television audience to finally confront systemic racism and inner rage, rather than just feeding them an easy, palatable message of harmony.
Subversive, perhaps, but at what cost? He had to issue a formal apology and censor the ending for daytime television, and we have to view this extreme $100 million spectacle in the context of the broader musical landscape of the early 90s. We have to talk about the Nirvana Factor.
The grunge movement.
Exactly. Late 1991 is not just the era of Dangerous, it is the era of Nirvana's Nevermind. While Jackson is spending tens of millions of dollars on vector morphing, CGI, and 100-ton hydraulic stages, Kurt Cobain is quite literally killing the pop star era in a thrift store flannel shirt and a guitar.
The aesthetic was definitely shifting.
Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit was offering genuine, unvarnished, authentic angst. The culture was rapidly pivoting away from the polished 80s pop aesthetic. And Jackson's response to that cultural shift was just more excess. He was trying to buy and engineer edge with an endless budget, and the Panther Coda showed the cracks in that strategy.
I see why you think that, but I'm not convinced he was just trying to buy edge. He was operating on a scale that grunge simply couldn't touch, and he used that scale to modernize himself into a global humanitarian prophet.
A prophet? That's a strong word.
We cannot discuss Dangerous without talking about how he utilized this unprecedented cultural footprint. Just look at the Super Bowl XX7 halftime show in 1993.
It was undeniably the zenith of his cultural power, I'll admit that.
Before Jackson, halftime shows were marching bands, drill teams, and Elvis impersonators. It was a bathroom break for the viewers. Jackson steps onto that stage, stands completely motionless for a full 90 seconds while the crowd loses its mind, and then delivers a masterclass.
The tension he built was incredible.
He drew 133.4 million viewers in the US alone. For the first time in television history, the ratings actually increased during the halftime show. He completely invented the modern standard.
The scale of that broadcast is hard to even comprehend today.
And the artistry remained intact, even at that massive scale. During this exact time, the music industry was becoming obsessed with the loudness war.
Right. Actually, explain the loudness war for a second, because I think people hear that term and just think it means turning the volume knob up on the stereo.
Right. It's not the volume knob, it's about compression and limiting on the master track. In the 90s, engineers started crushing the dynamic range of albums. They would squash the difference between the quietest whisper and the loudest snare drum hit so that the song would jump out of radio speakers and sound louder than the song playing before it.
So just hit you all at once?
Yeah, if you look at the audio waveform of a loudness war casualty, it looks like a solid black block, a sausage. It's loud, but it is incredibly fatiguing to the human ear.
It destroys all the nuance.
Exactly. But Bruce Swedian, Jackson's engineer, stubbornly refused to participate. He protected the dynamic range of Dangerous. He left the transients, the sharp initial spikes of the drum hits, completely intact. He forced the listener to physically turn their stereo knob up. And when they did, the sound stage was incredibly deep and wide. It remains an audiophile's dream, despite being a mass market product.
And he certainly leveraged that mass market reach.
He used it for genuine altruism. He didn't even take a performance fee for that Super Bowl halftime show. Instead, he negotiated for the NFL and Frito-Lay to donate $100,000 to his Heal the World Foundation, specifically to aid youth affected by the 1992 Los Angeles riots.
He was very focused on the foundation.
His humanitarianism wasn't just a PR stunt, it was deeply personal. Consider his friendship with Ryan White.
The teenager from Indiana?
Yes, Ryan White was expelled from his middle school simply because he contracted HIV through a contaminated blood transfusion. While the rest of the country was consumed by panic, misinformation, and bigotry regarding the AIDS epidemic, Jackson publicly befriended him.
He brought him to Neverland, right?
He invited him to Neverland, spent time with his family, and ultimately memorialized him in the sweeping orchestral ballad, Gone Too Soon. He was using his unparalleled platform to humanize the victims of the AIDS epidemic on a global stage when very few pop stars were willing to take that risk.
That is a compelling argument, and the work he did for Ryan White was undeniably beautiful. But have you considered that this very savior complex, this need to heal the entire world while maintaining absolute artistic perfectionism, was fundamentally unsustainable?
It was certainly a heavy burden.
It was a crushing burden. The humanitarian efforts were noble, but the weight of being a global prophet, combined with the sheer, grueling logistics of the Dangerous World Tour, broke him. We have to look at the tragic 1993 collapse.
The turning point.
The immense pressures of maintaining this spectacle of flying around the world, performing high-impact choreography, while dealing with the physical toll of his vitiligo and scalp reconstructive surgeries from his 1984 burn injury, it all came to a horrifying climax.
You're talking about the allegations.
Yes. The era ended in an absolute nightmare when he was hit with child sexual abuse allegations by the Chandler family. The extreme stress of those allegations, combined with the brutal physical demands of the tour, led to a severe addiction to painkillers. He was forced to abruptly cancel the remaining tour dates across Asia, Australia, and South America just to enter a rehabilitation facility. The era didn't conclude, it shattered.
It was a devastating pivot in his life and in pop culture.
Devastating is the exact right word. Neverland, the sanctuary he had literally built to escape the harshness of the world, was raided by police. It had turned into a crime scene. The spectacle had grown so massive, the psychological isolation so profound, that the entire structure simply collapsed on itself under its own weight.
I hear you, but I push back on that framing. I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because it inherently judges the art by its tragic epilogue. Are we allowing the heartbreaking 1993 collapse and the awful realities of his personal life to retroactively erase the empirical artistic and cultural triumphs that defined the years prior?
They don't erase them, but they recontextualize them.
But the innovations remain objective facts. The integration of MPC60 swing quantization into global pop, the vector morphing algorithms developed by PDI, the stubborn protection of dynamic range by Bruce Swedian against industry trends, the global unification of that Super Bowl performance, those things remain permanent historical pillars of cultural evolution, regardless of the personal tragedy that followed.
They are historical facts, but they are inextricably linked to the psychology of the man who demanded them. If I can summarize my perspective on this, while I readily acknowledge that Dangerous is a masterpiece of technical engineering, it is ultimately a document of extreme paranoia and excessive spectacle.
Fair enough.
The dictaphone recordings made in total isolation, the violent outbursts of the Panther coda, the reliance on massive CGI and million-dollar budgets in the face of the grunge revolution, it all points to a profound, unmanageable vulnerability. The album was a monumental achievement, but it was also the tragic beginning of the end for the pop star era as we knew it. It proved that no amount of technological innovation, no matter how brilliant, can protect a human being from the crushing, isolating weight of global hyperfame.
And to summarize my view, Dangerous remains a timeless triumph of audio engineering, visual effects, and sheer artistic independence. By walking away from the safety of Quincy Jones and fully embracing Teddy Riley's street-level grit, Jackson successfully modernized an icon. He forced the integration of aggressive industrial sounds with immaculate pop production.
He certainly forced the issue.
He revolutionized music television with actual cinematic technology, and he leveraged his unparalleled fame to directly address systemic racism in the AIDS epidemic. It stands as a brilliant testament to a visionary who absolutely refused to let his art stagnate.
We certainly agree that Dangerous was a pivotal, unparalleled moment in cultural history. It pushed the absolute boundaries of what a pop album and its accompanying visual media could technically and culturally achieve.
It truly did. Examining both the staggering technical triumphs and the profound personal tragedies offers us a much richer, more nuanced understanding of this era. There is so much more to explore in the rhythm programming, the short films, and the history surrounding 1991. We invite you, the listener, to dive into the intricacies of this material for yourself and form your own conclusions.
It is an era of music history that absolutely demands a closer listen.
So the next time you put on a pair of headphones and hear that heavy, syncopated drum beat kick in, ask yourself, are you hearing the sound of a man breaking free or the sound of a man building a fortress?